9 gigawatts.
Right.
I mean, if you really want to understand the sheer, physical footprint of the digital world right now, you kind of have to start with that exact number.
Yeah, 9 gigawatts is, it's almost hard to wrap your head around.
Right. It's roughly the equivalent power output of 9 large nuclear reactors operating at absolute peak capacity.
Which is staggering.
It is. And the crazy part is that happens to be the total IT capacity managed by just a single real estate company. So welcome to today's deep dive. To ground our analysis today, we are looking exclusively at the Q1 2026 financial results and the earnings call presentation from Digital Realty.
They are the world's largest cloud and carrier-neutral data center platform.
Exactly. And just to give you a sense of scale, they currently operate over 300 data centers. That's across more than 55 metros, 6 continents, and they serve over 5,500 customers.
Yeah, their reach is massive.
But really, that 9 gigawatt figure is the crucial metric for our mission today. Because, whenever we use an app or stream something, it feels invisible. But today, we're looking past the software layer to examine the actual physical infrastructure.
The concrete, the steel.
Right. The massive tracts of land and the raw electricity required to basically house this booming artificial intelligence revolution.
Because the scale of the infrastructure required to support this next generation of computing, it represents a fundamental shift in commercial real estate.
Okay, let's unpack this, because the financial results they reported for Q1 2026 are heavily driven by this specific shift.
They really are.
Digital Realty reported a 15% year-over-year growth in core funds from operations per share. That brings them to $2.04.
Which is a very solid jump.
Yeah, and they signed $707 million in total bookings at 100% share. And nestled right inside that $700 million figure is literally the single largest lease in the entire history of the company.
Yeah, and on the earnings call, their CEO, Andy Power, was very direct about the catalyst for that massive lease.
He was.
And, for that double-digit growth overall, he specifically called out, and I'm quoting here, swiftly advancing hyperscale AI-oriented capacity.
Right, hyperscale.
Yeah, this is what the industry refers to as hyperscale demand. Basically, tech giants are securing just unprecedented amounts of physical space and power to train and deploy these artificial intelligence models.
I was actually thinking about this like the gold rush.
Oh, yeah, selling the pickaxes.
Exactly. Instead of trying to mine for the AI gold themselves, Digital Realty is basically selling the Levi's and the pickaxes. They're selling the highly specialized digital real estate that you absolutely need to house these massive AI servers.
That's a great analogy. And what's fascinating here is the stark, mechanical difference between a traditional cloud server and an AI training cluster.
Right, because if we look at traditional cloud storage, the servers that hold your emails, websites, streaming video, those require standard, albeit very robust industrial air conditioning.
Yeah, just lots of cold air.
But when we transition to AI infrastructure, the physical requirements seem to just fundamentally change. It's less like building a warehouse and more like, engineering a heavy industrial manufacturing plant.
Yeah, that is the exact right way to conceptualize it. It really comes down to power density.
Power density.
Right, so a standard server rack in a traditional data center, it might draw somewhere between, say, 5 to 10 kilowatts of power.
Okay.
It gets warm, sure, but you can cool it just by blasting chilled air up through the floor tiles. But an AI training rack,
Yeah.
fully loaded with thousands of advanced graphics processing units, all working in parallel, that can easily draw 50 to 100 kilowatts per rack.
Wow.
Yeah. Air simply lacks the thermal capacity to absorb and carry away that much concentrated heat.
So the physical architecture of the building has to change entirely. You have to move away from standard HVAC systems and start, piping liquid coolant directly to the processors.
Precisely. You are installing these massive closed-loop liquid cooling systems. You have to reinforce the concrete floors to handle the sheer weight of these high-density server racks.
Because liquid is heavy.
Exactly. And you're upgrading the local electrical substations just to ensure uninterrupted power delivery.
Which brings us back to that 9 gigawatt number.
Right. If we look at that 9 gigawatt total capacity figure from the report, roughly 3 gigawatts are currently in place.
Okay, so a third of it.
Yeah, but they have a massive 6 gigawatts in future development capacity. So they are effectively designing the entire next generation of global infrastructure entirely around the thermal and electrical demands of AI.
So to put this in perspective for you listening, whenever you query an AI model, to analyze a data set or write an email, you aren't just pinging some abstract software in the sky.
No, not at all.
Your prompt travels across a network, hits a server in one of these heavily fortified, liquid-cooled campuses, pulls a massive, concentrated spike of electricity just to compute your prompt, and then sends the output back to your device.
It's intensely physical, but, raw computational power sitting in an isolated vault is effectively useless.
Right, the data actually has to go somewhere.
Exactly. The hyperscale facilities are the heavy compute engines, but an engine requires a transmission to actually deliver the power to the wheels.
Oh, I like that. And that structural necessity is actually the perfect bridge to the second major segment detailed in this report.
Yeah, the interconnection side.
Because while a massive hyperscale AI leases, they command the highest top-line revenue, the so-called smaller side of Digital Realty's business actually broke internal records this quarter.
It did, yeah.
The report shows $98 million in bookings came from a category defined as 0 to 1 megawatt plus interconnection.
Which is a bit of a mouthful.
It is, but it represents a 42% year-over-year growth in that specific category. They brought in 116 new logos, which is just industry jargon for new enterprise customers.
Right.
And they now manage over 234,000 physical cross-connects globally.
And the growth in that 0 to 1 megawatt category, it's highly indicative of how modern enterprise networks are actively restructuring their physical architecture.
Let's analyze the business logic there, though. Because if they just signed a record-breaking multi-megawatt hyperscale lease, which obviously contributed heavily to a $700 million quarter, why carve out so much space in the presentation for $98 million?
Right. Mathematically, it's a fraction.
Exactly. It's a fraction of the total bookings.
Yeah.
Why are they prioritizing this 0 to 1 megawatt customer so much?
Well, it's because of the outsized strategic value of interconnection.
Okay, explain that.
This isn't just about renting a smaller cage of servers. Interconnection is literally the physical mechanism of the internet. Inside these data centers, there are these highly secure areas. They call them meet me rooms.
Meet me rooms. Sounds like a dating app for servers.
Basically, if you lease space in the 0 to 1 megawatt category, you aren't just buying power, you are buying proximity.
Proximity to what?
To other networks. Let's say you operate a major financial trading platform.
Sure.
You need your transaction data to reach a specific cloud provider's network with the absolute lowest possible latency.
Because in financial trading, a delay of a few milliseconds can cost you millions of dollars.
Exactly. So instead of sending your encrypted data out across the public internet where it has to, bounce through multiple routing protocols and third-party networks.
Which slows it down.
Right. Instead of doing that, you lease a small footprint in the exact same Digital Realty facility where that cloud provider houses their network switches.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and you pay Digital Realty to run a physical yellow fiber optic cable literally across the ceiling trays, plugging your server rack directly into their server rack.
So what does this all mean from a corporate strategy perspective? Like, why is this so valuable for Digital Realty?
Well, if we connect this to the bigger picture, they are engineering a connected data community.
An ecosystem.
Exactly. By aggregating thousands of different networks, cloud providers, and enterprises under one roof, they create an incredibly dense digital ecosystem. And once an enterprise establishes, say, dozens or hundreds of these physical cross-connects with all their key partners, the switching costs become astronomical.
It becomes a massive structural moat.
Exactly. It's incredibly sticky.
Because moving to a competitor wouldn't just involve, like, loading some servers onto a truck.
Yeah.
You'd have to sever all those direct, high-speed, secure physical connections and then somehow attempt to rebuild that exact same physical proximity somewhere else.
Which is nearly impossible to replicate overnight.
Right.
So the hyperscale leases, they provide the massive influx of raw capital and bulk capacity. But the 0 to 1 megawatt interconnection business, that creates the dense network gravity that permanently anchors the ecosystem.
That makes total sense. But, successfully operating both of those models, securing hundreds of acres with massive power grid capacity for AI on one hand, while simultaneously operating highly dense interconnection hubs for global networking on the other, that requires radically different geographic strategies.
Oh, absolutely. You can't just drop these facilities anywhere on a map.
Right.
Data center geography is strictly bound by the physical constraints of the planet. You need proximity to high-voltage power lines, massive water sources for industrial cooling, and terrestrial fiber routes.
And the Q1 report actually details a highly aggressive strategy of redrawing that global map. Let's look at the actual land acquisitions they executed.
Let's do it.
In the United States, they acquired an 873-acre parcel in Atlanta for $95 million.
Yeah.
And this is explicitly designed to support over 1 gigawatt of IT capacity on a single mega campus.
Which is just massive.
They also acquired a 30-acre parcel in Portland for $50 million to support 160 megawatts.
And that Atlanta acquisition, it's a perfect example of solving that power density equation we talked about earlier.
How so?
Well, finding 873 contiguous acres of industrial zoned land with immediate access to a regional power grid capable of handling a 1 gigawatt continuous load without destabilizing the surrounding metropolitan area.
Yeah, that sounds impossible.
It is exceptionally difficult. They are securing that land now because the sheer electrical requirements of future AI clusters will basically render smaller urban footprints obsolete for training purposes.
Wow. But the report also outlines strategic interests that seem focused purely on the interconnection side, not just the massive power side.
Right.
Like, they acquired Telepoint in Sofia, Bulgaria. They purchased 90 acres near Milan, Italy for 65 million euros. And they entered agreements in Malaysia, including Telco Hub 1 and a new 15-megawatt development in Cyberjaya.
Yeah.
So if Atlanta is a play for raw power and space, what is the mechanical logic behind a location like Milan?
Ah, Milan. The Milan acquisition is entirely about intercepting data at terrestrial choke points.
Choke points.
Yeah. See, data doesn't cross the oceans via satellite. It crosses via massive fiber optic cables resting on the ocean floor.
Subsea cables.
Exactly. When data travels from Africa, the Middle East, or Asia toward Northern Europe, those subsea cables physically land along the southern coast of the Mediterranean.
Okay, I'm picturing the map.
Right, and from there, the data must travel north overland via terrestrial fiber routes to reach the major economic hubs in Frankfurt, Paris, or London.
Oh, meaning Milan acts as a geographic funnel.
Exactly.
It sits right on the primary overland route connecting the Mediterranean landing stations to the rest of Europe.
Precisely. If you are a global enterprise looking to process data flowing between those continents, you want your interconnection infrastructure located precisely at that choke point to minimize latency.
That is so strategic.
Right.
But acquiring strategic global choke points and massive mega campuses introduces a significant financial complexity, doesn't it?
Sure.
Like, Digital Realty is generating revenue and incurring costs across Europe, Asia, Africa, and the Americas. If I'm analyzing their operational risk, managing that many different sovereign currencies seems incredibly volatile.
It is a massive challenge.
Right. If the euro or the Malaysian ringgit depreciates heavily against the US dollar, couldn't the revenue from those international hubs effectively just evaporate on the balance sheet?
That is a critical operational risk for any multinational real estate investment trust. However, the earnings presentation explicitly details their methodology for mitigating foreign exchange volatility.
Okay, how do they do it?
They operate using a natural hedge strategy.
A natural hedge.
Yeah.
What is the actual financial mechanism behind that?
It basically involves aggressively matching the currency of your liabilities to the currency of your local assets.
Okay, give me an example.
Let's look at that Milan acquisition.
Sure.
They are leasing space to European customers who will pay their monthly cross-connect fees and rent in euros. If Digital Realty used a US dollar-denominated loan to build that facility, they would be constantly converting those euros back to dollars to service the debt.
Which exposes them to daily exchange rate fluctuations.
Exactly. So instead, they issue debt locally in euros. They pay their Italian staff in euros. They contract the local utilities in euros.
Oh, I see. Because the revenue is generated in the exact same currency required to service the local debt and the operational expenses, the facility functions as a self-sustaining financial ecosystem.
You got it. The exchange rate back to the US dollar only really matters when they decide to repatriate the net profits. But the day-to-day solvency of the facility is completely insulated.
That is fascinating.
It's a highly disciplined approach to global expansion, and that financial discipline is a crucial lens through which to view the final and perhaps most important section of this Q1 report.
The balance sheet.
Exactly. The balance sheet and the mechanics of their future revenue pipeline.
Which brings us to the concept of backlog in commercial real estate. According to the report, Digital Realty currently has a record total backlog of $1.8 billion at 100% share.
That is a massive number.
It is. To contextualize the scale of that number, that $1.8 billion represents roughly 23% of their currently in-place annualized rent. That is a huge volume of capital just sitting in the pipeline.
Right, because the backlog is essentially a ledger of legally binding contracts where the lease has been signed, but the revenue hasn't begun to hit the income statement yet.
Okay.
And to understand why $1.8 billion is just waiting in the wings, we have to look at the timeline of hyperscale development.
The report specifically notes that the weighted average lag between signing a lease and the actual commencement of that lease is 19 months.
19 months. And that lag is a direct result of the complex physical engineering we discussed earlier.
Right, the liquid cooling and all that.
Exactly. When a major tech firm signs a 50-megawatt lease today, they aren't moving servers into a finished room tomorrow. The building might still be an empty concrete shell.
Wow.
Digital Realty has to procure the specialized liquid cooling chillers. They have to coordinate the delivery of heavy industrial switchgear, install backup diesel generators, and rigorously test the electrical pathways.
And navigating the global supply chain for heavy industrial electrical equipment takes time.
A lot of time. So the contract is signed, the space is spoken for, but the rent checks don't commence for roughly a year and a half.
Let's look at the balance sheet itself, though.
Yeah.
Because there is a number here that I think requires serious scrutiny.
Okay, what is it?
Digital Realty is currently carrying $18 billion in debt.
Yeah, that's the big one.
I mean, in any normal real estate or infrastructure context, maintaining highly leveraged positions during an aggressive, capital-intensive global expansion phase, it introduces massive vulnerability. Especially in a macroeconomic climate where, central bank interest rates have been a major sort of anxiety.
Oh, absolutely. This raises an important question regarding corporate leverage. But, the raw debt figure alone lacks context. You have to examine the structure of that $18 billion.
Okay, let's break it down.
According to the presentation, 95% of that debt is unsecured.
Meaning the debt is backed by the overall creditworthiness of the corporation, rather than being a traditional mortgage tied directly to specific parcels of land or like individual data center buildings.
Correct, which provides immense operational flexibility.
Right.
But the most vital metric here is the interest rate exposure. 93% of their debt is fixed rate.
Oh, wow. So if global interest rates spike dramatically, their debt servicing costs remain entirely static.
Precisely. They also maintain a well-laddered debt schedule with a 4.7-year weighted average maturity.
Okay, what does that mean in plain English?
In corporate finance, there is a fundamental principle called matching the duration of assets and liabilities. They are financing long-term, illiquid physical assets, the concrete and steel infrastructure meant to operate for decades with long-term, fixed-rate debt.
Ah, I see. So when you synthesize those two data points, the $18 billion in fixed-rate debt and the $1.8 billion locked into the backlog, the underlying financial stability becomes incredibly clear.
It really does.
The fixed-rate structure means they know exactly what their capital costs will be for the next 5 years. Simultaneously, that 19-month lag in the backlog provides a highly predictable, mathematically guaranteed runway of future cash flow.
It completely removes the guesswork from their capital allocation strategy.
And that predictable cash flow must be exactly why they felt confident enough this quarter to officially raise their full-year 2026 core FFO guidance to between $8 and $8.10 per share.
Exactly. They aren't hoping the market grows. They already have the signed contracts sitting in the ledger.
It's basically a masterclass in risk management while executing a massive scale-up of physical infrastructure.
It really is.
Well, we have covered a tremendous amount of ground today. We started by looking at the staggering 15% growth driven by the unprecedented thermal and electrical demands of the AI boom.
Right, requiring facilities capable of handling advanced liquid cooling and 9 gigawatts of total power.
Yeah. We explored the dense nervous system of the internet, analyzing how the 98 million 0-to-1 megawatt interconnection business utilizes those physical cross-connects to create a deeply entrenched, latency-reducing moat.
And we tracked the physical geography of data from the massive power-dense mega campuses in Atlanta to the strategic subsea cable choke points in Milan.
All insulated by local currency natural hedges.
Exactly.
And finally, we unpack the structural integrity of their balance sheet, matching $18 billion in fixed-rate unsecured debt against a highly predictable $1.8 billion revenue backlog. You listening now have a comprehensive understanding of the physical mechanisms, the geographical constraints, and the capital strategies required to house the digital world.
It really forces you to realize that our digital lives are entirely reliant on concrete, copper wiring, chilled water, and highly calculated real estate acquisitions.
It is intensely physical. And that brings me to a final provocative thought I want to leave you with today.
Oh, I love these. Let's hear it.
Throughout this report, Digital Realty refers to a concept that beautifully summarizes the future of this infrastructure. They call it data gravity. They talk about their platform's ability to help customers solve complex data gravity challenges.
It is a brilliant way to conceptualize network architecture.
It is pure physics applied to digital information. Think about it. The theory of data gravity suggests that massive data sets inherently act like planetary bodies. The larger a data set grows, like the billions of parameters required for a foundational AI model, the more gravitational pull it exerts.
Right.
Because moving petabytes of data across terrestrial networks is slow and incredibly expensive, applications, services, and secondary businesses are physically pulled into proximity.
They are forced to relocate their servers into the exact same buildings to reduce latency and transit costs.
Exactly. The data literally pulls digital mass together into concentrated hubs.
Which perfectly explains the necessity of the Atlanta mega campuses. The gravity is pulling so much compute into a single geographical singularity that the traditional facilities simply run out of physical space.
But here's the question you have to ask yourself. If data gravity creates an infinite feedback loop of growth, constantly attracting more compute and more power demands to a single location, what happens when these massive 1-gigawatt physical campuses hit the absolute ceiling of the local power grid?
That's the big question.
The digital realm might feel infinite, and the applications of AI seem boundless, but the physical reality of our planet's electricity transmission infrastructure is finite. Will the hard physics of the electrical grid soon become the ultimate bottleneck, capping the infinite growth of data gravity?
Wow.
It is a complex engineering problem to mull over the next time you ask an AI model a question and a massive liquid-cooled 9-gigawatt infrastructure springs into action to deliver your answer. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. We hope we've given you a sharper lens through which to view the hidden physical architecture of the digital world.